Recording in progress.
Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avataravarishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Sudismritipurananam alayam garunalayam namami bhagavatpadam shankaram lokashankaram. So this is a continuation of our discussion of the foundational text of Indian philosophy. So in the last session we discussed a very simple text. By far it is one of the primers that you study to enter the world of Vedanta. The next stage of study of Vedanta scriptures is the study of Prasthanatraya. I mean the three foundational traditions of the canonical literature with special reference to Advaita Vedanta. These are called commentaries for Shankaracharya on the 10 Upanishads, that is Isha, Kena, Kata, Prasna, Munda, Mandukya, Taittiriya, Aitreya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka. These 10 Upanishads, Brahma Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita. Now, when we study Shankaracharya's commentaries, which constitute the fundamental canon of Advaita or non-dualistic tradition, very often those who have to depend upon the English translations or even vernacular translations, they miss a few important components of the traditional method of training. For that we need an introduction to the fundamental structure of these texts and the way the fundamental ideas are normally expressed. I may peep into the structure which normally a teacher explains at the very beginning of introducing all these commentaries, especially the most difficult commentary called Brahma Sutras. Okay, so this is what we are going to discuss today, and after that I shall begin a session on the evolution of concepts of Indian philosophy and a special reference to Advaita Vedanta. So we all know that there are certain fundamental concepts which evolve, which change. For example, karma. The word karma as used in the Bhagavad Gita, and the implication of the same concept in the Mimamsa ritualistic tradition, and again the special technical implication in the commentaries of Shankaracharya, and how that karma ideal has evolved during the last almost 1200 years since Shankaracharya's passing away. This is just one example. So this is one thing. So to begin with an introduction to the structure, the fundamental structure of commentaries. To begin with, I must begin with a formal description of the structural nature, the foundation of Brahma Sutras. Now, what is Brahma Sutra? First of all, what is Sutra? Sutra is a pithy statement, as we all discussed earlier. Alpaksharam asandigdham saravat vishyato mukham astobham anavadyam cha sutram sutravido viduhu. This is an old definition, but it means is a sutra. See, for example, Patanjali Yoga Sutra. You all studied, you all listened, most of you listened. See, at the very beginning, for example, Atha Yoga Anushasana. This is the beginning, the first sutra of Patanjali Yoga Sutra book. It is the first of the 195 sutras. Atha Yoga Anushasanam, Yoga Chittavati Nirodha. These are all simple phrases, and some of them do not, many of them do not have a noun, a verb, a qualifier, an adjective, nothing like that. Just a statement. Such a statement, if you just translate it to English, really makes no sense. Do you understand? That means that sutra needs an elaborate description, explanation, and that explanation is called a commentary. It's called a bhashya. So, what is a bhashya? Bhashya is, this we already discussed, different types of canonical literature in Vedantic tradition, with special reference to Advaita. We already, actually during my first 2-3 sessions, first, second and third sessions, I discussed this. So, a sutra is a pithy statement which is loaded with meaning, but not obvious unless you read a commentary. So, such a sutra needs a commentary. The commentary is called a bhashya. A bhashya not only explains the sutras, but also it seeks to establish a definite doctrine. Shankaracharya established his Advaita doctrine, writing his commentaries on all these 10 Upanishads, Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita. Now, when you come to Brahma Sutra Bhashya, you can get translations. Ramakrishna Mission itself, Ramakrishna Mission published an excellent translation. But if you read the translation, really speaking, any translation for the matter, you may not get the full meaning. Well, if you read it, let's say if you read a book on engineering, I don't think you can become a wonderful engineer. Absolutely unthinkable. In fact, many of these technical, philosophical, classical works do have something in common with these technical books, which you have to study from a teacher. And frequently in translations, these technical details cannot be fully explained. We have to write several volumes. Even then, it won't be very clear. To begin with, I shall say a few things about Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Now, Brahma Sutra contains 555 sutras. It also begins Athado Brahma Jijnasa. And now we are going to discuss, we are going to make an investigation in the nature of Brahman. That's how it begins. Just like Atha Yoga Anushasanam. So Atha is sometimes a very common term while introducing a sutra literature. Adhado Dharma Jijnasa is a Purva Mimamsa Shastra. Jaimini's huge book of thousands of sutras. So Brahma Sutras contain 555 sutras, divided into 4 chapters. And again, it also contains, if you classify from another angle, 191 adhikaranas. So these sutras are divided into adhikaranas. Adhikaranas are based on subject matter, which are discussed in the sutras. A number of sutras together can constitute one adhikarana. Isatya adhikaranam, Samanya adhikaranam, and so on you find. So, an adhikarana actually means a topic, a section of a complete argument pertaining to one topic. So, one entire section which may have many sutras, which actually constitute a very comprehensive, exhaustive discussion of one topic. And each adhikarana again can be studied if you understand 5 steps when you enter an adhikarana. Now this is a very important thing. Many of you may, when you read this as a translation of Brahma Sutras or even other Upanishad commentaries and Gita commentary, you find objector. Somebody comes and a different view is expressed. That different view, that view is actually not the view or the doctrine, not the view which reflects the doctrine of the particular commentator, that view is coming from another person who is trying to contradict, let us say, the view of the commentator Shankaracharya in the context of Advaita. When Ramanuja writes, he is trying to establish, let us say, Visishta Advaita, that is qualified non-dualistic system. So also Madhva tradition, Vadiraja, Jayatirtha, Vyasatirtha, many others wrote books on Madhva tradition, dualistic tradition, which of course Madhvacharya came almost maybe 300 years after Shankaracharya. He wrote books, and in that book he actually establishes his doctrine, that is Dvaita Siddhanta, Madhva Siddhanta is called, the doctrine of dualism. And there his view is dualism, and his objection, the objection to the view comes from maybe Advaitins. So you often find objection or objector. It is called Purva Paksha in Sanskrit language. So Purva Paksha, literally it means prima facie view. Means what it means, on the face of it. Actually it is much more than prima facie view. Either in the legal, the court of law, when you take up a case, there's a prima facie evidence, it's called. That evidence doesn't establish the crime or the incident. It means there is a possibility for further investigation. There's a possibility that this prima facie view needs some investigation, a thorough thorough investigation, and is likely to be perhaps rebutted or maybe rejected. It is different from the other view, in Latin. These are all Latin expressions used mostly in the courts of law. There's another expression where it means it becomes self-evident. It is not self-evident, rather it means this is, on the face of it, this is what it appears to be. So now the point is, so this is any book, if you take any book, let's say translation of Brahma Sutra Bhasha, if you take, suddenly you find objection comes. Now, there is a difference between the real implication of this Latin expression, prima facie, and the Purvapaksha as used by Shankaracharya. The fundamental difference. That's frequently not understood by those who just translate Purvapaksha as a prima facie view. That's because Shankaracharya is bringing a different view, and it's a tool that he uses to establish his view. So you often find in the sutra literature, in the Bhasha literature, Brihadaranyaka and especially Brihadaranyaka Chandogya, you find. Now Shankaracharya, he gives an answer to this objector's view. Then he says, now if you take another point of view, here is my answer to that. So it is very interesting, those who are interested in dialectics, it's almost a feast for the intellect. One should be able to enjoy this feast. Perhaps that may make our culture more civilized and refined. You can imagine the glorious time when a boy of, let's say, 6-7 years old, traveling all over India, and he speaks only in Sanskrit, nothing to do with the vernacular, mind you. Kind of super elitist, spiritually oriented society of those times. You should not imagine why Shankaracharya was not an egalitarian, because he was living 8th century. So that means you have to remember just maybe 200 years after Augustine, 300 years after Augustine, and long before Aquinas. So you have to imagine that is the time, long before Aquinas. So the point is, he uses this technique. Suppose he wants to take up one particular mantra, one particular statement from Brahma Sutras or Gita or Upanishads. Then he will make some statements. Or maybe the very beginning itself, he will bring a view from the ritualist philosophers. And I'm going to explain this in my second part of this lecture today itself, what it implies, And then when this objector gives a prima facie view, something that appears to be correct on the face of it, in first impression, then Shankaracharya says, no, you are not right. Then he goes deeper, he analyzes this statement from different angles. Finally, the objector will have no peace of mind unless he accepts Shankaracharya's view. He thrashes him from so many angles. Remember, that's the greatness of it, intellectually. Using all respectful language. Kapilasya Mahamune, he finds, for example, he is refuting Sankhya view. But he uses Kapila. Kapila is my great teacher, great sage. But I beg to differ from you. That's the beauty and greatness and charm of this statement. And also Jaimini. Jaimini was a great sage who lived thousands of years before Shankara. So also Kapila. So when he differs his view, I beg to differ, but with all politeness and humility, I have these views in front of me. Finally, the old ancient masters are forced to surrender their arms. And Advaita is established. I'm just giving an example. I just mentioned karma. It's become very clear to you when I mentioned this. Let's say the word karma, K-A-R-M-A. It's a very, very important concept in Vedanta tradition. The word karma was used by the earlier thinkers in India in a totally different sense. First, we have to understand that the sense, the meaning in which the word karma was used by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. That is roughly 3rd millennium BC. If you read the Gita, you find the word karma is used in so many different implications. A very scientific, thorough, analytical understanding of the word karma. If you do karma with a selfish motive, sakama karma, with a proper understanding of what you are doing that work for, what you are doing the karma for, a perfect sense of, well, I am doing this and I want a benefit. For this benefit, I am doing this karma. Then Lord Krishna brings in this niskama karma ideal, karma yoga. You do everything with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, with a sense of detachment, but at the same time full involvement and dedication. It's called karma yoga. Now, that is not the sense in which the word karma is used in Shankaracharya's commentary. People sometimes make this colossal blunder, mistake of saying that Shankaracharya was against karma because they don't understand the historical evolution of the word of this concept of karma. So Lord Krishna used karma in one sense, either sakama karma or you do work with a sense of purposeful identification, you are doing it and you want a benefit of that karma. Or the more exalted concept, doing everything with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, with total detachment, without any selfishness. Niskama karma eventually becomes karma yoga. Okay, that is one stage. That, let's say 3rd millennium BC up to 6th century BC. So roughly around 2400 years. And 6th century BC marks the beginning of Buddhism. Buddha was born in the 6th century BC. So when Buddha was born, this karma doctrine, which was originally taught as an exalted form of karma yoga by Lord Krishna in the Gita, that ideal completely disappeared. And what happened? The word karma had come to mean something totally different. Karma meant performing rituals, Vedic rituals, with a definite purpose. If an householder performs a Vedic ritual accompanied by his wife, spending a lot of money, Sapta Havir Yajnaha, Sapta Soma Yajnaha. There are 14 types of Vedic rituals described in the ritualistic literature of the Vedic tradition. Agnishtoma, Adhiratra, then Somayaga, and there are many, Aptoyama, and so on. I am not going into those details. I have discussed this on innumerable occasions in many other sessions in the class. If you got in doubt, you can ask later. So, all these rituals which are performed by, let's say, an householder. Pasyema Sharadashatam, Jivema Sharadashatam, Akneye Swaha means I am offering this to the Lord of Agni, Lord of Fire. Let me live, let me be blessed to live for 100 years with the full health of my eyes and senses and mind. And also people used to perform rituals for wealth, for progeny, for prosperity, and all with a definite motive. This was the type of rituals which Buddha found happening around him when he was living in the 6th century BC. Totally different from what karma really meant during the time of, or at least explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna in the 3rd millennium BC. Okay, then what happened? Buddhism in India underwent a lot of changes. It lost its original character. It became a kind of nihilism, especially Vijnanavada and Shunyavada took a negative turn towards the 4th and 5th and 6th centuries. So eventually Buddhism came to mean a kind of nihilism. At that time, two great philosophers emerged in India. The senior one was Kumarila Bhatta, and his younger contemporary was Prabhakara. So these two great philosophers, they were Mimamsakas. It's called the philosophy of Mimamsakas. Ritualist philosophers who took their lessons from Jaimini Sutras called Purvamimamsa Sutras. Mostly teaching rituals, different types of Vedic rituals. So the Kumarila Bhatta and Prabhakara, they revived this ritualistic philosophy. And they established these rituals are the essence of Vedas. They were trying to regain the ground for Vedas, and they were arguing. Their debates were mostly against Buddhists of those times, mostly Vijnanavadins and Shunyavadins. The later schools who have become somewhat nihilistic philosophers in India. Remember, Buddhism did not undergo the same modifications outside India. Buddhism underwent a complete modification within Indian context. But when Buddhism traveled outside India to China, Japan, other countries, there these changes did not happen, because these changes happened only in the background of Hindu society, Hindu culture. So what happened, Mimamsakas, Kumarila Bhatta and Prabhakara, they regained the ground for Vedic ritualism. They refuted Buddhism, and they also refuted any idealism. They established the doctrine that Vedas are meant for performing rituals. That was the situation when Shankaracharya was born 8th century AD. So what was the task before him? He had to regain the ground for Vedanta. The Mimamsakas had grabbed Vedic heritage, made it their monopoly, their heritage, reducing Vedic culture into some kind of a ritualistic culture. And what Shankaracharya did, he came and he did not reject Mimamsakas ritualism, but he said that is not meant for everyone, and that is not the only purpose of Vedic culture. I mean, that is not the only teaching of Vedas. If you want to perform rituals, okay, don't tell me that everyone should practice ritual. Rituals are meant to acquire wealth, progeny, prosperity, and so on. So the Mimamsakas argued, Kumarila and Prabhakara argued that every person should perform ritual. It's like saying every aged person should eat Cadbury chocolates and should eat ice cream and Coke, nothing else. Absolutely ridiculous. Can you ask a learned professor, you should eat these chocolates? Like children, babies, they have to eat chocolates. They cannot, they may not be very particular about GMO food, and they have to eat little children. So Mimamsakas argue that every person should eat chocolates, ice cream, nothing else. Shankaracharya said no. If you want to eat chocolates when you are small, okay, but don't tell every person should eat chocolate. So he said no. Vedas contain not only ritualism, but also a higher philosophy, Vedanta, that transcends ritualism. So any person can take to higher life. Mimamsakas argued, for example, ritualist philosophers argued that you can take to monastic life, mendicant's life, only when you are old, dull, poor, lame, blind, or deaf. These are the terms used by Mimamsakas. Shankaracharya quotes their views in the Bhashyas. I mean, spiritual life is the last resort of an imbecile. This was the view of Mimamsakas. Shankaracharya said no. If a brilliant man, if a big CEO, if he wants to take to monastic life, he can. If a small boy, he may be super brilliant, has the potential to become the President of the United States. If that person wants to take monastic life, okay, no problem. But Mimamsakas will not say that. They said everyone should marry, have children, enjoy all the worldly things, and then when he becomes old and deaf and poor and lame and blind, then he can take to monastic life. This was the Kana, Kubdha. You can find all these terms are used by Mimamsakas. Shankaracharya said, Brahmacharyadva, Grihadva, Vanadva, Yadakhareva Viraji, Tadakhareva Pravrachit. One can practice transcendental values, monasticism, renunciation, going for higher mystical life, either from this stage of childhood, boyhood, the time when he is a student, or even if he is an householder, or even if he has spent a lot of time after retirement in a forest. Any time, if a person wants to live a higher life, he can become a great mystic. He can take to a life of renunciation, Shankaracharya established. Not only that, according to Mimamsakas, Vedas are meant only for a tiny, small community. Actually, if you take India's census of, according to Mimamsakas, Vedas are meant for only Brahmins and Kshatriyas, which constitute a small, tiny fraction of Indian society. So, Mimamsakas were terribly rigid. Shankaracharya opened the door. No, anyone, anywhere in the world, in any culture, any tradition, can become a monk, can go to Himalayas, can go anywhere, take to monastic life. You find this Paul Brunton, he was a journalist living in New York. He read about Ravana Maharshi. Straight away he took a ship to Madras and he came to Ravana Maharshi. He became a mystic. You can find Emerson. He read a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, a very inaccurate translation by Charles Wilkins. He became a mystic. You can find influence of these great ideas in the writings of Thoreau, Whitman, Blavatsky, and of even the founder of the Christian Science movement, and so on. You find Anywhere you find, if you go to Himalayan ashramas, you find there are people from all over the European countries and West America, Canada, other places who are flocking around, trying to live like let's say, following the path of Shankaracharya. Wherever you find higher ideas of mysticism, that's a road opened by Shankaracharya. So what I mean to say, that's why Shankaracharya says, Chittasya Shuddhaye karma natu vastupalabdhaye vastu siddhi vicharena na kinjit karma godibhi. Karmas are good. If you do without any selfish motive, it helps you to attain mental purity. But for higher enlightenment, you need knowledge. If there is a piece of rope in the semi-dark room, and if you think it is a snake, then you have to bring light to understand that it is not snake, it is only a rope. Without bringing light, if you go on beating that rope, you will not understand that it is not a snake. You may go on beating the rope and finally you think you have killed a snake. Still the idea that this is a snake doesn't disappear. For that you bring light. To get rid of darkness, you need light. So, this is an important point, remember. So, Shankaracharya did not reject karma, but he only said, when you reach a higher level of evolution, then you have to give up Srauda karma, Smartha karma, Sagama karma. All the rituals mentioned in the Vedic canonical literature, which are meant for people who want to attain different things. There are different types of karma. Why I am talking about karma here? I will come to this later. After some time, I will come to this later. Now come back to the old subject that we are discussing. That is the structure of Brahma Sutras. Now, coming back to the subject, Purva Paksha. Now, if you read one statement in the Upanishad literature or Brahma Sutras, or if you read a statement in the Bhagavad Gita, Mimamsakas will come and tell you this particular statement means you should perform karma all the time. Or the karma that is mentioned here is Vedic ritual. This is the Purva Paksha view in some of the books you find. Means prima facie view. So, no, Shankaracharya will come and say, no, this is not actually correct. He will analyze the statement. Finally, he proved that this is not real meaning. The real meaning is these karmas, sakama karmas with the definite selfish motive, are to be performed only when you do not have an inclination for higher transcendental life. If you have a higher inclination for transcendental life, higher mystical life, you are not bound to practice these rituals. So this is the Siddhanta Paksha. I mean, this is the real view. So two views to be understood when you enter these commentaries. One is Purva Paksha, or the objective's view. Prima facie is the only appropriate word to use for want of a better term, but it means is the apparent view, or the view that may appear to be correct, but it needs to be investigated into and to be corrected. That is Purva Paksha, the objective's view. The objective's view actually means a view, an approach or interpretation that comes from a non-Advaitic tradition. Non-Advaitic tradition. Now, these views are actually put forward by Shankaracharya with the purpose of making a thorough investigation into the real meaning of the statement. And the ultimate purpose is to establish the doctrine of non-dualism. Okay, now I shall read one verse which gives you a list of these 5 important components in analyzing the commentaries of Shankaracharya. That is, Vishayo Visheshchaiva Purvapaksha Sthadottaram Sangadhischedi Panchangam Shastre Adhikaranam Viduhu. So what is Adhikaranam? Means a set of sutras constituting one unit. We together discuss one topic with various views and interpretations from various schools of thought, especially non-Advaitic schools of thought, who question and who give their own interpretation, which is different from Advaita. And finally, Shankaracharya establishes Advaita by refuting all the other non-Advaitic interpretations of the particular Adhyarana. So the first one is Vishaya. Vishaya means subject matter. All these the Brahma Sutras, Adhikarana, there will be one Upanishadic statement which is analyzed and investigated into. So this subject matter. So sometimes the subject matter may be let's say all these particular Vedantic Upanishadic statements are meant to establish this Advaitic doctrine. All these Upanishad mantras, statements establish this particular view. So that is Vishaya or subject matter. The second one is Vishaya. So one is Vishaya, means subject matter. Vishaya means a doubt. Somebody may ask a doubt. What is this? I shall try to explain this doubt, something very funny. Now, if you take the first sutra of Brahma Sutras, very interesting. It's a little boring, but it's very interesting. Let's say the first sutra. Let's say one is Adhado Brahma Jignasa. You know, this sutra is analyzed in this manner. Now, what is the use of making this study of Brahma Sutras? First of all, the very purpose of study of Brahma Sutra itself is being questioned. Avicharyam va Brahma Abhyasa Nirupanat Asandeha Avarattvabhyam na vicharam tadarhadi adhyasaha aham buddhisiddhu asangam brahma sudhiridam sandegar murti bhavacha vicharyam brahma vedataha. I shall try to explain this. Now, superimposition is discussed here. First of all, the doctrine will establish that Brahman is the ultimate reality, is an all-pervading reality. Now, is there any purpose, any benefit of making this study? First of all, Brahman is a self-evident reality. And by knowing Brahma, getting Brahma Jnanam doesn't serve any particular worldly purpose. You make an attempt to study something only if you have got any doubt. You cannot have any doubt about something which is not related to your everyday experience. And also it doesn't serve any particular purpose. So why should we study Brahma? If everything around is Brahman, Sarvam Khalidam Brahma, etc. Bhamadi Tika will tell you, if everything is Brahman, then why should we study Brahman? Everything is Brahman, Sarvam Khalidam Brahma. The whole universe is pervaded by the universal divine spark, Brahman or Atman. Then why should we study? It's a question arises. If God is present everywhere, then why should we go to a temple and pray? Why should we meditate? If God is present everywhere, then why should we meditate? This question arises. Similarly, if Brahman is everywhere, and you have no doubt about it, and it is a self-evident reality, and by knowing which you are not going to gain anything particular. By knowing Brahman, what happens? Empirical sense, you have no benefit. Actually, spiritual progress is not meant to establish or bring any material goods. That's an important thing to remember. If you meditate, it may help you in a professional life. But that is not the direct benefit of spiritual enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment is its own reward. It doesn't make you to make more profit your company. Spiritual realization is actually its own reward. It is not meant to serve another purpose. It is a self-evident reality. So it doesn't bring any special benefit. At the same time, Brahman is present everywhere. Then why should you make an investigation? You can put in modern language. God is present everywhere, you say. Then why should you go to a temple or a church? Why should you meditate? The reason is God is present everywhere, but for us it is only an idea. In normal life, we superimpose the unreal on the real and the real on the unreal. We take this world to be a reality. So, in order to get a correct understanding of this truth, we need to make a thorough investigation into the nature of Brahman. So, normally, we go through this process of superimposition. We may read in Upanishads and Vedas that Brahman is present everywhere. So naturally, but we are not able to experience this in our everyday life. Brahman is sarvavyapi, sarvam khalidam Brahma, everywhere. But we don't experience it. In our everyday life, our senses and our mind together create this illusion, leading to a technical term, it's called adhyasa or superimposition. We superimpose perfection, eternal nature on things which are imperfect and non-eternal. And not only that, when we talk about God or Brahman is the all-pervading reality, we don't really experience it the way we experience empirical things. So we cannot experience it that way. And also you say, by realizing Brahman, you don't get any special material benefit. So that's why asandeha abalatvabhyam na vijaram tadarhati. So there is a Purvapaksha view, objectivist view. Brahmaneshana called investigation of nature of Brahman itself doesn't serve any purpose, it has no meaning. So Shankaracharya will say, no, normally in our real life we don't experience this all-pervading reality. We experience only what our mind experiences at the sensory level. That is not the absolute reality. So there is a possibility for doubts. And not only that, when you realize Brahman, you get liberation. It is true that liberation doesn't serve any empirical purpose. But liberation is its own reward, it's its own purpose. This is a fundamental question to understand. In my lecture, my retreat on the role of spiritual values in education, I said spiritual values will help you in your material life, but spiritual enlightenment doesn't necessarily serve any tangible purpose in our empirical material life. Spiritual liberation is its own reward. But this will realize only when we attain the spiritual liberation. Spiritual progress is its own reward. But if you tell a beginner, oh, you are not going to get any special benefit by spiritual realization, he will not attempt it. So you have to tell him, well, you get peace of mind, etc. But later you understand, spiritual enlightenment is its own reward. It stands independent of any empirical, material, tangible benefit or profit or special purpose or attainment. It is its own reward, it is a state of spiritual evolution. And in order to reach that state, we have to actually make an investigation into the nature of Brahman. Now I am just giving you one example. See, the objectors say there is no need to meditate or make an investigation into the nature of the absolute meaning of life. That is true. In our everyday life, suppose somebody comes and tells you, what's the result, what's the purpose of spiritual realization, what's the use of being a Buddha? One may ask the question, or being a Sri Ramakrishna. People may ask, people will not take up anything unless there is a visible, tangible purpose shown in front of us. So you'll find at the beginning you get peace of mind, you get all this sense control, self-restraint, everything. But when you actually become a liberated soul, then you understand these material benefits, all these things, they are nothing. Spiritual liberation, spiritual attainment is its own reward. It stands on its own ground. We don't care for byproducts. Nobody starts a company or factory for byproducts. You may get a lot of waste material, you may sell it and get some money out of it. But you don't start a company for producing trash or byproducts. Trash you may sell and make some little money. So all other benefits are only byproducts of spiritual attainment. So anyway, this argument continues. I'm just giving one example. So the important point to remember is there are these 5 elements. So I'm going to explain again. So one is Vishaya subject. Vishaya is the absolute reality, Brahman. The second is Vishaya, which means doubt. The third is Sankati, means it's a relevance, a pertinence, connection between the specific Upanishad sentence under consideration and the chapters in the Pada of Brahma Sutra. I shall explain this. The third one is connection or relevance. What is the relevance? Upanishad mantras or statements are quoted in Brahma Sutras. Now, what is the connection between certain Upanishadic statements found in the quoted in the Brahma Sutras and the chapter and a particular section of Brahma Sutra? So, how do you connect? How do you establish the connection, the relationship between certain Upanishad statements mentioned or quoted in the Brahma Sutras and the particular section or the topic in which it is discussed? The fourth one is Purvapaksha, I already established, that is Uttarapaksha Siddhanta. This is the technique normally used in interpreting Brahma Sutras. This is an important thing to remember. Another very important consideration is who is the right person to study this, and what is the apparent benefit. Remember, that also should be discussed. One is, that is Adhikari Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana. First one, for example, who is the eligible person to study a particular Vedantic textbook? Who is the eligible person? The most eligible person is a person who has got sadhana sadhushtaya, the one who has got a strong sense of discrimination between the real and unreal, a sense of renunciation, a man or woman of self-restraint and self-discipline, self-control. These are the qualities necessary for an eligible student. And then Vishaya is the subject, the particular valid subject discussed in the particular book in general. The third one is the connection, the practical relationship between the subject and the text. How do you establish the particular subject you have in mind is discussed in the text? So the connection should be properly understood. And the fourth one is very important. It should not be confused. Prayojanam, the utility of studying the text. Okay, here we must understand very well. All texts are tools to help us to intellectually understand this highest idea. That will have the benefit of purifying our mind. See, if you go on reading some higher books on some transcendental spiritual topics, you find, even if you don't understand completely, it will have purifying, refining effect on our emotions and our intellect. That benefit is there. And you will also get parosha jnanam, which means you get indirect understanding, intellectual conviction of what you study. But again, remember, the ultimate purpose is to practice spiritual disciplines based on this intellectual understanding and then get liberation, moksha. And that moksha is the purpose But once you get that moksha, when you look back, you will understand that moksha is not the benefit of you studying the books. This is an important point, remember. Mokshasya akaritva, the statement in Shankara's commentary. A bit difficult to understand. We have to practice spiritual disciplines. We have to practice higher values. We have to study these great books with a sense of sanctity and sacredness and a pure mind. And then we will understand these great ideas. And then if you practice discipline for a long time, you get spiritual liberation. Now the question arises, is spiritual liberation the result of your activities? That's a big question. Anything which is a result of an activity is not eternal. A plant is the result of sowing a seed on the soil. Now, the plant is the product of linked to the seed that you sowed in the soil. If you remove the seed, there cannot be a plant. So plant is dependent upon the seed. The cause is dependent upon, the effect is dependent upon the cause. The effect is inseparably linked to the cause. Suppose you say, I got spiritual liberation, moksha, because I did a lot of meditation. Then that moksha is not eternal. Why? Because that moksha becomes the result of an activity, meditation, etc. So once you attain moksha, you understand it is not actually the result of an activity. Mokshasya akaritva, a statement in the Shankara's commentary. Akarya means not being the effect or product of an action. Karya means effect. Karana means cause. But once you attain moksha, then you will realize the fact moksha stands on its own ground. This is true in all respects. Higher prapatti or devotion also is independent of your action. Actions are necessary, but actions do not constitute the cause. It's a bit difficult to understand. So I shall try to explain once, make one more effort. You can ask question later. If anything is produced by a cause, the product cannot be permanent. That's important. The product is the end result of something else. The product is a karyam. Karyam means effect. The karya means the effect. Karanam is the cause. So once you realize this spiritual liberation, then as a matter of your own inner mystical experience, you will realize the liberation is not the result of actions. It doesn't mean that you don't have to act. This is an important theory in Advaita Vedanta. Mokshasya akaryatvat. Moksha, liberation, is not a karyam. Karyam means effect. So, at the same time, all efforts are necessary. All the efforts, all your activities, meditation, japa, everything is important. For what? To remove the obstacles. When the obstacles are removed, the reality becomes self-evident. Suppose you had a granite block, you are a sculptor. Actually, when you remove all unnecessary parts, Buddha's image may come out. But can you say that the Buddha was not present there? If Buddha was not present there, a potential Buddha, a Buddha was not potentially present in the granite block, your sculpture work will not be effective. So all activities are meant to remove obstacles. See, again, in the dark, semi-dark room, there's a piece of rope. You mistake that piece of rope for a snake. Okay, you bring light. You understand it is not a snake. It is only a rope. The fact it is a rope is not the product of light that you brought. The light served a purpose, removing darkness. The light serves one purpose, removing darkness. So all our spiritual struggles have one important purpose, to remove obstacles. Once obstacles are removed, the reality comes out. Because the reality doesn't come from outside. We are Brahman, we are Atman. That's our natural, spontaneous nature. Because of so many karmas, vasanas, samskaras, avidyas, ignorance, that reality was veiled, was hidden. When you practice meditation, when you practice japa, when you practice spiritual disciplines, then what happens? That absolute reality, the divine spark within us, it manifests, is self-manifest. It is Swayam Prakashaka. It becomes self-evident. So, when you remove all obstacles, what happens? Our natural, true nature comes out. That's why in the commentaries we said, all Shastras, all Upanishads, all books have only one purpose, to remove obstacles, to remove darkness. You bring light, not to produce a rope, but to remove darkness. Because it was a darkness that made a wrong notion in your mind that it is a snake. When light is brought, the fact it was not a snake, that it is only a piece of rope, that fact becomes self-evident. So when you practice spiritual disciplines, our true nature, our divine reality comes out. That's why in Advaita Vedanta it is said, Brahmajnanam, spiritual liberation, spiritual enlightenment is not something that we attain. It is not something that attaining as a result of some activities. It is not something that we produce. It is called, it is not vikarya, it is not apya, it is not samskarya, it is not utpadya. It's not something that you produce like a pot maker making a pot using soil or mud. It's the spiritual realization is not produced like a pot maker produces a pot. And spiritual realization is not something that comes as a result of some kind of mixing. If you put milk and let's say yogurt, you get, of course you get yogurt. But if you refine oil seeds, you get oil. It is not samskarya. It is not vikarya. It is not sort of a change or refinement. It is self-evident. This is important. If it is self-evident, then only it becomes permanent. What is naturally ours, that what naturally belongs to us, it alone can be permanent. What we get as a result of some activities, we will get, but there is a possibility that it is impermanent. What is naturally our spiritual nature alone can be permanent. So mokshasya akaritva is an important subject in Vedanta. You study all the books. So very important. You meditate, you do puja, everything is wonderful. For what? To make ourselves ready for spiritual liberation. That is chittasya shuddhaye karma, natu vastu balabdhaye. Only for chitta shuddhi, mental purity. It's important. This is true in all spiritual traditions. This is an important thing. There's a difference between monotheistic, Abrahamic tradition of God's grace coming to you on a platter and this concept of our true spiritual nature manifesting itself when the obstacles are removed. It's an important. All activities are meant to remove obstacles. In Vedanta it's called Chitta Suddhi, mental purity. I know this is, in fact, this idea should be made clear. These are all passwords of Advaita Vedanta. So you can easily say, what is not naturally yours, what you are given, it may not last for long, even in empirical life. What is naturally yours, it can never be taken away from you. You may think it is taken away, but it will be there. You remove all obstacles, the fact that it is your natural nature, that realization comes, it is self-evident, it is Swayam Prakashika. You are ready, now we can ask, we can have interaction, discussion, most welcome. I believe you enjoyed this kind of a bit dialectical discussion. It's very wonderful. Thank you, most welcome.
Vijay,
Yeah.
so you talked about the Mimamsakas and the Shankara's viewpoint.
Yeah.
So we know the Veda has got, just classified into two parts,
Yeah.
Karmakanda and Jnanakanda.
Yeah.
So the Jnanakanda talks about, the Karmakanda talks about doing karmas.
Yeah.
You said, Shankara said that is all for Chitta Shuddhi. What about the Mimamsakas? How do they explain the Jnanakanda?
Yeah.
How do they interpret it in terms of karmas?
You know, actually, Shankaracharya doesn't reject Mimamsa. He only rejects the theory that Mimamsa view is the only view found in Vedic literature. See, Mimamsakas always believe that every person should marry, should make money, should enjoy empirical life, and this is the only purpose of human existence. And then if you do a lot of good things, you go to Surga, go to heaven, you enjoy wonderful things, you come back, and again you are born, and this life continues, again you do good things, go to heaven and coming back. This is Mimamsakas view. So Mimamsakas never had this concept of moksha as we understand in Vedanta philosophy. That's why Mimamsakas believed, it's a very important thing, they believed that higher mystical life is meant only for those who are aged, poor, blind, deaf, and there are many interesting terms. I don't want to, not so very pleasant. So Mimamsakas always believe that.
The relevance, they only differ in the relevance on what stage of life. So
yeah, the point is,
Jnanakanda is for when you are in sannyasa.
You know, the sannyasa ideal as we understand in modern times as found in fact, Jesus Christ is an example. Let us say, no, remember, this is not limited to Hinduism or Vedanta alone. If you look at a universal perspective, Mimamsakas would say that Jesus, you tell Jesus Christ, you go and marry, you should have all worldly things. That's the way. Mimamsakas would have told Jesus Christ also. They would have strongly objected to Jesus Christ going to meditate and all these things, you know. So Mimamsakas, and you know why an example, the whole purpose of human existence is to enjoy great things in this world and wonderful things in heaven. Nothing more, nothing less. Sargakamo yajeda. This is frequently quoted. Those who want to go to Sarga, they should perform yajna, rituals. What are rituals? Rituals are normally practiced by householders accompanied by their wife. And the purpose of these rituals is to get things that make your life more enjoyable in this world and to be able to enjoy the same things in heaven. Surga. Nothing more, nothing less.
Mimamsakas explain the Jnanakanda, the Upanishads. What do they interpret?
Mimamsakas they interpret Jnanakanda as Arthavada. They will tell you there are many views, Tattwamasi, Aham Brahmasmi. Many of these statements which are obviously Advaitic, obviously highly transcendental. They would say all these statements are made with to tempt you, as if you perform these rituals, you get this experience. I'll give you an example. Aham Brahmasmi. It's a Mahavakya. It found in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in the Shukla Yajurveda. Okay. Now, Aham Brahmasmi means the absolute reality, the all-pervading reality is my own true nature. And the Brahman. Oh, Tattwamasi Chandogya. Okay. Mimamsa, for example, Aham Brahmasmi, Mimamsa say, Aham means Yajamana. Yajamana means the person who perform these rituals. If you see these Vedic yajnas, Yajamana, the husband, will be performing, he'll be sitting there, and for the Hoda, Udgada, all the ritualist or priest of Vedic tradition, Hoda, or Adhidyu, Yajurveda tradition, or Udgada, Samaveda tradition, Brahman of Atharvaveda tradition, they will be sitting there performing yajnas, etc. So all these rituals are performed for the sake of this yajamana. Yajamana is a person for whose benefit, for whose material benefit this ritual is being performed. Now, according to them, Aham Brahmasmi means the yajamana, the person for who spends the money, who spends takes all the responsibility. Others priests are just being paid. Yajamana is the one mostly he will be an householder, accompanied by his wife. Dharakni Sahidam Karma, all rituals should be performed in the presence of fire, Agni, and accompanied by Dhara, wife. So, for a material purpose. So, when you perform this ritual, Aham Brahmasmi, Brahma means Devata. Suppose these rituals are being performed for Indra, some Vedic gods and goddesses, Agni, Varuna, and so on. Devata Prapti. So, Aham Brahmasmi mantra is interpreted by Mimamsas Devata Prapti. If you perform this ritual, you get union with that particular deity. And then that deity, that god or goddess, will bless you to have all the wonderful things in this world and also in the other world, in heaven. Such a grand mystical statement is interpreted in this way by Mimamsas. Excuse me, please continue.
This is good. The other question I had was about the Purva Paksha. Is there also the notion of Pratipaksha Bhavana, applying the opposite as a dialectical tool to understand something?
You know, Pratipaksha Bhavana is from Veda Yoga Sutra. Don't bring it there. These are an entirely different tradition, Don't bring in Yoga Sutras into this particular context, So this is a different system of philosophy. So the point is, Mimamsakas interpret all Jnana Kanda, all that statements which do not perform which do not give an injunction for rituals, they don't recommend any rituals, they consider these are all Arthavada. Arthavada means just a temptation. If you do this, you get a result. That's all. All the great statements that were extolled by great world thinkers in the Upanishad literature, according to Mimamsakas, these are all statements like, if you tell children, if you do this, I shall give you a chocolate. This all. That's what they say. Arthavada literally means giving chocolate. Literally means giving chocolate. Moksha is not, they don't accept moksha.
I understand. I'm just recollecting for myself what the meaning of the word artha is. You have the chatur, you have the four ideas, four artha, dharma, kama, moksha.
Oh yeah, moksha, for their idea of moksha is going to heaven and you get moksha from this life cycle for some time, but you will be born again to enjoy the fruits of your good actions. This continuing transmigratory cycle. There is no question of coming out of this wheel of transmigratory cycle according to Mimamsakas. All statements which talk about liberation, higher mystical transcendental experience, according to them are all Arthavadas. Not only that, according to them, Amnayasya Dharthata Anarthikam Adadarthanam. Amnaya, all Vedas have got only one purpose. What is the purpose? To recommend some ritual that you should perform to make to have more money, wonderful things here and also in heaven. So all Amnayas are only one, all Vedanta statement. Amnayade Udishyade Dharmanenadi Amnayaka. That is the Mimamsakas interpretation. Vedas are nothing but statements which discuss, which recommend some rituals for attaining material benefits. That is a dharma. So according to Mimamsakas, any statement which doesn't contain an injunction, a vithi, injunction, any statement which doesn't contain injunction for some ritual, it is anarthaka, means meaningless. Anarthakyam, adadarthanam. Amnayasya kriyarthatvat anarthakyam adadarthanam. All Vedic statements, they are meant for kriya. Kriya means a ritual. A ritual. You do a puja, and before you do the puja, you do sankalpa. By performing this puja, this ritual, I want to get this. You make a determination of sankalpa, and you pray to the priest. If you don't pay to the priest, the benefit go to the priest. So you have to pay the priest, dakshina. When you give dakshina, the benefit is transferred to your account. This is how it works. It is a pure simple principle. When a pujari performs a ritual on your behalf, and when you pay him dakshina, when you do pay dakshina, the benefit of the particular ritual is transferred to you. Otherwise, it will go to him. So that's amnayasya kriyarthatvat. All Vedic statements are kriyartha, means meant to recommend some Vedic ritual. Therefore, any statement which doesn't contain injunction for Vedic ritual is anarthaka, means meaningless, irrelevant. That's the purpose. It's an important principle. Shankaracharya came and he said, no, you can't force everyone to eat chocolates. Those who want to go and read some mystical books, meditate, those who want to leave the path of a great philosopher or mystic, okay. Even if you are a child, you can become a mystic. Brahmacharyadva, grihadva, vanadva. Yad akareva viraji, tad akareva pravraji. Even if you are a small boy studying Vedas, Brahmacharya ashrama, if you are an householder, if you had Ramanuja was an householder, Mandana was an householder, great people, great men. Or if you are a retired person meditating in a forest, that also vanaprasthasama. From any state you can reach, you can ascend to this higher mystical life. It was this idea that actually caught the attraction, the attention of great thinkers when they talk about Advaita Vedanta. Because Advaita Vedanta talks about your natural spiritual evolution. Any person at some point of time, maybe after your retirement, you may feel, well, it's enough money, I don't need any more, I want to resign, I want to spend my time, rest of my lifetime, reading some books or writing or meditating. Fine, that is from vanaprasthasana or maybe higher life. But Mimamsas won't allow that. Even if you are a retired man, you should continue performing these things for enjoyment. It is a very refined, very cultured kind of bohemian, Epicurean philosophy. I cannot compare Mimamsaka, I cannot call it bohemian, Epicurean, because Epicurus and the followers of Bohemian, they are little worldly. Mimamsakas were very, very disciplined people. They will go on performing these rituals, taking 3-4 baths a day, performing all these, fasting. All these they will do. Very rigid life, very disciplined life. But they believe that the whole purpose of all these rituals is meant to help you to go to heaven. And come back again, in good family, a lot of wealth, enjoy, and perform these rituals, again go back and again going back. This cycle, that's all. So that is the Mimamsa ritualism. So genuine Mimamsakas do not exist these days. You don't find Mimamsakas, they still practice many of these rituals, but Mimamsa as a philosophical system as such doesn't exist in today's conditions. But you have to remember, many of the great Vedantins were born in Mimamsa family. Because when you are born in a Mimamsa family, you are trained to practice a lot of asceticism, rigid austerity, fasting, terrible, highly focused way of studying and thinking, all that. But then, from that only, Vedantic thinkers emerge, because they get a thorough study of the Vedas, and that helps you in studying Vedanta, Uttara Mimamsa. So I think today's subject it's a bit, if you are most welcome, you are most welcome to ask questions. It needs a lot of clarification, many of the ideas. I was trying to give a technical structure, because very often when you read Vedantic books, not only Vedantic books, any books you find objection, you find. What is objection? In Advaitic tradition, Shankaracharya uses this as a dialectical tool to explain and to clarify some of his ideas from different angles. So it was not he who started. Kumarila Bhatta and the pre-Shankarite writers also used this, but Shankaracharya used as a perfect system. He will make a statement, and then he will discuss many possible interpretations of this statement from Buddhist point of view, from Mimamsa point of view, from Sankhya point of view, and so on. And finally, he will say, he doesn't reject all these views. Remember, Shankaracharya never says any particular views wrong. He says you can go one step beyond. That's what he says. That's the idea behind. Yeah.
Namaskar. I hope you had good travels. When I'm looking at the bookstore for SF Vedanta, for Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads with Shankaracharya's commentary, I see Swami Gambhirananda's English translation. Is that a translation you recommend?
It's a translation.
Could you speak a bit about?
It is certainly a very fine translation that I can recommend. Swami Gambhirananda's book. This is a wonderful translation.
Could you speak a bit about the Swami?
Oh, the Swami was he was the president of Ramakrishna Order. He was, of course, I knew him. I mean, knew means I'm very junior compared to him. He was living in Belumat when I was a student from 84 to 86. He is credited with many important works in our tradition. He translated Madhusudana Saraswati Gurartha Deepika and also Brahma Sutras, and also it seems he has written a number of books, translated many of the classical Vedantic books into Bengali language. But his contribution to English reading public, the great translation of Brahma Sutras, and also the translation of Madhusudana Saraswati's Gita, the Gurartha Deepika, into English. So I would like to recommend that book. That's one of the finest translations that's available. But you have to remember, in Vedantic tradition, you have to, very often, great eager students, because they are so eager, so focused, they may capture the right meaning. But cursory, on the face of it, when you read, it may not be clear to you why this objection is raised. The objection, Purvapaksha, it is a technical tool that Shankaracharya uses. The objector may represent either Buddhist schools, Vijnanavadins, Shunyavadins, and so on. Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas in the Mandrikakarika Bhasha you find. And also they may represent Sankhya view, they may represent Mimamsaka view, ritualist view. So they may represent any view. So any non-Advaitic view is projected as an objection. The objection in Sanskrit is Purvapaksha. It literally means prima facie view, on the face of it. But actually the Latin expression doesn't fully reflect what it actually means in Vedantic tradition. In Vedantic tradition, Shankaracharya himself prepares the background to further expand his view and clarify his views more and more by giving a possible alternate interpretation of the same text which he is interpreting, and then he analyzes more closely and establishes Advaitic doctrine. So it is remember one thing that I want to tell you. You can think of that glorious age when a small little boy was going all over India, Indian subcontinent, all the way from extreme south to extreme north, refuting all these aged scholars, thinkers and philosophers and politely telling them, sir, I beg to differ, and finally defeating all of them, That's a glorious, interesting picture. Many Western thinkers like Paul Brunton and Mr. Porter, they all commented upon this unique phenomenon. You can imagine. So some people think that he was quarreling with Buddha. See, for example, he refused a Buddhist view, the Sautrantika, Vaibhashika realism and the Vijnanavadin, Shunyavadin idealism. But he was not quarreling with Buddha. Shankaracharya was walking all over India 1200 years after Buddha's passing away. At least 1000 years after his passing away. So Buddhism had taken different turns within Indian context. So he actually finds fault with some of the interpretations. So that is how he establishes this Advaitic view. Okay, thank you. Most welcome. I think we can conclude today. So thank you for your active participation. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.
Recording stopped.
Namaste.
Thank you so much. Sir Maharaj.
Yeah,